The most destructive habit is waiting to feel like it. It's an addiction that guarantees a life of mediocrity. You know the feeling. That electric hum of a new idea, the one that promises to be the one. It's a beautiful, thrilling lie. And Chloe was a master at telling it to herself. Her screen glowed with the code of Fading Echo, the indie game she'd been building for a year. It was a love letter to her late grandmother, a story of memory and loss, and it was 90% complete. The final 10% was a swamp of debugging, a tedious, soul-crushing process of fixing tiny errors, one by one. Her mind, starved of excitement, began to wander. And then it happened. The rush. A new idea, so brilliant, so perfect, it felt like a physical shock. A fast-paced platformer called Starlight Jumper. The mechanics unfolded in her mind, elegant and addictive. The antagonist, the real one, was not the buggy code on her screen. It was this seductive whisper of a new beginning. She told herself she'd just sketch out the character, just for an hour, to get it out of her system. But 1 hour bled into 3, and soon her monitor was filled not with corrected code, but with pixel art sprites of a leaping astronaut. She was high on the feeling of creation, the feeling of potential. The swamp of Fading Echo felt 1,000,000 miles away. That's when her phone buzzed with an email. It was from her publisher. Great news! We got you a slot at the Indiecade Festival. We just need a playable demo in 1 week. A week. A cold wave of panic washed away the warmth of her new idea. The choice was no longer abstract. It was a deadline. Finish the boring, meaningful project, or chase the thrilling, impossible new one. She chose the thrill. It was a desperate gamble, a belief that raw passion could bend time itself. Fading Echo was too complex, too mired in bugs, she reasoned. But Starlight Jumper. Maybe she could build a flashy, vertical slice of that new idea. Something that would wow them. She worked with a manic energy, fueled by coffee and the fear of failure. But the addiction to feeling it has a nasty side effect. The moment the work gets hard, the feeling vanishes. The elegant mechanics that danced in her head became clumsy, ugly blocks of code on the screen. A physics bug sent her astronaut flying into digital oblivion. An animation loop crashed the entire program. Each problem was not a puzzle to be solved, but a personal insult from the universe. The brilliant idea was turning into another digital corpse in the graveyard of her hard drive. The pressure mounted with every passing hour. The publisher's email sat in her inbox like a ticking bomb. She tried to go back to Fading Echo, but her mind was a scrambled mess. The code she'd written just days ago now looked like a foreign language. She had abandoned her momentum, and now she was lost between two broken worlds. The night before the deadline, she sat in the dark, staring at a screen that displayed nothing but a single, blinking cursor. It was a mocking, digital heartbeat, counting down the seconds to her professional ruin. She had nothing. Not a single working line of code from either project. She was a failure, paralyzed by the ghost of an excitement that had left her with nothing but the bill. In a last-ditch effort, she called her grandfather, a retired civil engineer. She expected sympathy, a gentle, "Do not be so hard on yourself." Instead, after she explained her creative block, he was silent for a moment before speaking, his voice flat and calm. "You know," he said, "when we were pouring the concrete for the foundations of the Bay Bridge, nobody ever asked the concrete if it felt like curing that day. We followed the plan. Rain or shine." The words were so blunt, so devoid of artistic romance, that they stunned her into silence. The truth of it, the simple, brutal honesty, hit her like a splash of cold water. Of course. That was it. She just had to do the work. A new kind of energy surged through her, an inspiration not for an idea, but for the act of work itself. This, she thought, was the answer. She would become a machine of discipline. She spent the next 2 hours not coding, but building the perfect productivity system. She downloaded a new task manager, color-coded her calendar, and set up a complex series of timers and reminders. It felt incredible. It felt productive. She was designing the system that would defeat her demons. It was a masterpiece of organization. And it was the deadliest trap her addiction had ever laid for her. She had mistaken the thrill of preparing to work for the work itself. As dawn broke on the day of the deadline, she looked at her immaculate schedule and her pristine desktop, then at her broken game code. She had not written a single line. She had just found a new way to feel like it. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard, ready to type the email of apology that would end her career before it began. Then her screensaver flickered on. It was a photo of her and her grandmother, taken years ago. Her grandma was knitting, her hands a blur of motion, a half-finished sweater in her lap. And Chloe remembered. Her grandmother knitted every single evening. Every evening, without fail, after dinner. Whether she was happy, or tired, or sad. It was not a passion project she picked up when inspiration struck. It was a practice. A quiet, steady rhythm, like breathing. The bridge was not built on feeling. The sweater was not knitted on feeling. And, fading echo would not be finished on feeling. The insight was simple and profound. She was not fighting for a good feeling, she was fighting for the work itself. She deleted the draft of her apology email. She closed the calendar and the task manager. She opened the source code for fading echo, scrolled to the very first reported bug, and stared at it. It was a tiny, stupid error in a single line of code. She did not feel a spark of passion. She felt nothing but the cold, clear duty of the task ahead. She fixed it. Then she moved to the next one. And the next. For hours, she worked in absolute silence, driven not by a high, but by a low, steady burn. At noon, she exported a build. It was not perfect. It was glitchy. But it was playable. It was real. She attached it to an email with a single sentence, "Here is the demo for Indiecade." Then she closed her laptop. The mediocrity she had feared so deeply was not in the slow, boring work. It was in the endless, brilliant chase for a feeling that never stayed.